Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Today, we're going to explore a deeply fascinating and honestly, highly relevant topic, the profound and often completely misunderstood intelligence of silence. We live in a world that constantly demands our attention. It's an incredibly loud world where speaking up is almost always equated with having value. But what about the people who choose not to speak? Today, we're going to uncover the hidden depths of the quiet mind.
Okay, let's dive right into this by challenging a super common modern assumption. Are quiet people really empty? Society often makes this hasty, kind of unfair judgment that if someone isn't talking, well, they simply don't have anything to say. We just assume their minds are blank or they lack ideas, but the reality drawn from our source material paints a completely different picture. Silence absolutely does not equal a lack of thoughts. Actually, it's often the exact opposite.
Section 1. The True Power of Silence. I want you to think of a quiet person's mind like the vast underwater portion of an iceberg. It is incredibly active down there. What you see above the surface, their outward silence, is just a tiny, tiny fraction of what's actually happening. While everybody else is busy figuring out what to say next, quiet people are observing the world in high definition. They are carefully listening to the nuances of conversations, they're watching those fleeting facial expressions and analyzing behavioral patterns. And honestly, most impressively, they're deciphering the unspoken words, the subtle body language and tensions that the rest of the room completely misses. So their silence isn't passive at all, it's a state of hyper-observation.
And because they're taking in so much information, quiet individuals are highly strategic with their output. They are actively conserving their mental and emotional energy, choosing to speak only when they know for sure that their words will add true, tangible value to the discussion. They just don't feel the need to fill dead air for the sake of it. And this is exactly why, when a traditionally quiet person finally does chime in, the whole room naturally stops and listens. Their words carry the heavy weight of careful consideration.
Moving on to part 2, psychology and self-awareness. Look at this. There is just a stark contrast between the quiet mind and the loud world we live in. While the loud world often reacts impulsively, the quiet mind pauses, processes, and offers a really thoughtful response. And when it comes to connections, the loud world is out there chasing superficial popularity, collecting tons of shallow acquaintances. The quiet mind, however, prefers deep, strongly rooted friendships. They might have a much smaller circle, but those bonds are incredibly solid. This whole thoughtful nature stems from what we call confident silence. Far too often, we mistake a quiet demeanor for insecurity, or maybe just shyness. But psychology tells us that their silence is frequently a profound sign of confidence. They are completely, 100% comfortable sitting alone with their own thoughts. They simply don't possess that nagging insecurity that demands constant external validation or attention from a crowd. Their presence is felt, even without them ever having to raise their voice. Section 3. When silence becomes a shield. Now, here's an important nuance. Not all silence is the same. While some silence is a natural expression of confidence, sometimes it's actually a learned behavior. It becomes a shield. This usually starts when an individual experiences situations where they're misunderstood, ignored, or harshly judged, which naturally leads to severe trust issues. So to survive this, they internalize their feelings. They keep their true thoughts locked away for protection. From there, their silence essentially becomes a screening process. They carefully observe people from a distance to determine who is actually safe to trust before they ever open up. This creates such a fascinating duality. To us, they might appear completely calm and serene on the outside, but there is an absolute storm of deep, complex thoughts and heavy emotional processing happening on the inside. This defense mechanism is an incredibly intelligent, albeit sometimes pretty painful, way to navigate a world that hasn't always been kind to their words. Part 4. The Rare Art of Listening. This brings us to the concept of quiet emotional intelligence. In a society where literally everyone is fighting for the microphone, true listening has become a remarkably rare skill. While everyone else is just waiting for their turn to speak, the quiet mind is actually digesting what's being shared. They're empathizing, they're understanding the underlying emotions of the speaker. And guys, this gives them a massive advantage in human connection. Because of this deep emotional intelligence, quiet minds naturally excel in specific areas. You'll see them as excellent leaders because they actually listen to their teams rather than just dictating to them. They make thoughtful writers,
innovative creators, and deep thinkers because they've spent so much time absorbing the intricacies of the human experience. They prove time and time again that you absolutely do not need the loudest voice in the room to make a monumental impact. In fact, history is profoundly shaped by quiet individuals. Just think of the great thinkers, scientists, and strategists throughout time. As the saying goes, many powerful historical figures spoke little, but their actions were loud. When they moved mountains. Their actions resonated far louder and for far longer than any grand speech ever could. Section 5. Actions speak louder than words. When society encounters a quiet person, we tend to quickly fill that silent void with negative assumptions. We assume they have a bad attitude, or that they're sad, or just plain boring. But the psychological reality is diametrically opposed to that. Quiet people are frequently the most caring, deeply loyal, and highly intelligent individuals you will ever meet. They just choose to express that loyalty and care through consistent, reliable actions, rather than showering you with empty words.
And because this quiet expression of loyalty is so unconventional, it creates a really specific effect. Human beings are naturally drawn to what they can't immediately figure out. Because quiet people don't lay all their cards on the table, they inherently generate an aura of curiosity and mystery. We are intrigued by them precisely because their depth is hidden just beneath the surface.
I want you to truly absorb this realization today. A quiet nature is not a weakness. It's not a deficit. It is an intentional, empowered choice. These individuals have simply learned a profound truth that, honestly, many of us are still struggling with. Explaining yourself to everyone, everywhere, all the time is completely unnecessary. Their peace comes from within, not from the approval of the crowd. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a question to reflect on. Look at your own habits in your daily life. When you're in a conversation, are you truly understanding the person in front of you? Or are you, like so much of the loud world, just waiting for your turn to speak? Embracing just a fraction of the intelligence of silence might completely change the way you see the world. Thank you so much for learning with me today.